Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with E.A. Sokovitz, and when you see his name spelled out, you'll see it's quite the mouthful, his last name. So, but E.A. he authored and completed and updated several versions of his book entitled "The Giver's Mindset," "The Giver's Lifestyle," "The Giver's Lifelong Learning." As you see, there's a theme between givers, and his organization is called the Givers University, and they have scribed what would amount to be 180 givers codes, consisting of the 54 wisdoms for happiness givers codes, the 54 wealth for freedom givers codes, and the 72 wellness greatness giver codes. So, welcome to the show, EA, and
thank you for having me on your great show.
For creating the Givers University.
Well, thank you so much. And I was listening to you say those kind words about me in my bio, and I thought, you know what? Even after all that, my last name is still longer, so I got to get to work.
So, actually, in part of your bio, it sounds like you grew up the son of an immigrant, a very successful immigrant, but an immigrant nonetheless, which is pretty awesome.
Actually, it was my grandfather, and then my father was born in the States, United States, as I was as well. But my father was a milkman, so back when I was 5 years old, and I used to help him on the milk route. Back then, milk came in glass containers, glass jugs, and there was a box outside everyone's house called the milkman box. And the amazing thing, Michael, is that there was always money in the milkman box, and not one single time did anyone ever touch it. It was milkman money, and different times, right? And so it was a very humble upbringing, nothing spectacular in any way, shape, or form. My dad was one-man operation for. I lived in Chicago at that time, in the greater Chicagoland area, a place called Oak Brook area. And, my father just worked for this Twin Oaks dairy, and he was a route, he had his own route, and it was basically his route, and he and I would help him at the ripe old age of 5 years old. So it was pretty ordinary background.
Yeah. So, with all your background, your humble beginnings, you managed to start a multi-million-dollar organization with the Givers University. So how did that kind of come about? What did you learn from your childhood that helped you do this?
Well, thank you. I appreciate being able to share that with your listeners, and hopefully in the meantime also share with them some golden nuggets that was passed on to me. At the ripe old age of 16, Michael, I took my first step towards becoming success, and I became a janitor. And but at 16 years old, I was able to be bonded, which basically means insured, and that allowed me to be able to go in expensive places. I could clean an expensive place in case my buffer hit a piece of equipment. The insurance company would pay for it, right? Yeah. And that also allowed me to be in really expensive homes. And one of the homes I cleaned every single Wednesday when I say the name, it won't mean anything to your listeners until I make the movie reference that the name goes along with. A few years back, there was a movie that came out. It was called The Founder. It's about McDonald's, and Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc, and actually it's a pretty good view. It's still out now on streaming and probably will be for a number of years because it's a fairly good view. I lived in that area. I witnessed the whole McDonald's phenomenon, and I can share with you that in the beginning of the movie where it says this is based on a true story, that's an accurate statement. It's based on a story. It's not the true story. So it's just, it's based on it. So very loosely so, Ray Kroc actually wasn't the way he's portrayed in the movie, and that's all Hollywood spin and drama, which I understand. But in any event, through the movie, Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc is talking to a gal outside his office, and she's in the whole movie. Through the whole movie, he's always saying, June this, June this, June that. That lady's name is June Martino, and that lady outside his office is the lady whose house I cleaned every Wednesday. And she was actually an extraordinary woman. When I met her, of course, she was already worth more zeros than I had fingers and toes. And I lived in that area, the greater Oak Brook area where the McDonald's World Headquarters was, and Ray Kroc lived in, she lived actually in Ginger Creek, which is an annex of Oak Brook. And she was interesting. She really was an amazing lady. She was actually the first woman ever to be able to trade on the floor in New York Stock Exchange. And she was extraordinary. And she shared with me one day the whole story, the intimate, the movie accurately, but she did share with me the importance really of the mentor, that Ray was her mentor. Ray Kroc was her mentor, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the first time, and she never said mentor, and I didn't know how to spell it, or didn't even know what it was. All I knew was I just didn't know what I needed to know. And obviously she had found out what she needed to know, because here I am cleaning her house, and it was $1 million home back then, let alone what it would be worth now. So I thought, man, I need to find a Ray Kroc. That's what I need. I need to find someone, just like she did, that could sort of that taught her, and I need someone to teach me. It wasn't a couple of months later. I actually, at the same janitorial service, I got a phone call for some man in from Detroit who was opening a diamond store, and they needed to see some carpeting. So I was sent over to give an estimate, and the man offered me a job. And he actually, that same man, became the father I never had, even though I had a father. And I became the son he never had, even though he had a son. And he truly was, and was my mentor until his life ended early due to his extreme diabetes. But the reason I share that story with you is because it really is the foundation of how Givers University even came about, to answer your question. And I want to share with you number one, I'm a huge advocate for mentors. If one of your listeners, if they own their own business and they don't have a mentor, in my world we call that naive, because you're just asking for trouble. When you have and when you have a mentor, you want to have a mentor that's done it. Not one of these, and forgive me for saying it so bluntly, but sometimes I tend to be a little blunt. And I think part of it, Michael, is at this point I just really don't care what people think of what I say. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I figure if they don't like it, that's on them. That's not on me, right?
Hey, as business owners, we need that blunt. Go ahead, be blunt.
Yeah. Well, and I've had and met over the years, a lot of what I call educated idiots. The ones that have all this book knowledge and they're spewing you all this information, but they've never done it themselves. And so to retain someone like that, you're actually really just funding their education, because they can't teach you something they haven't done. And I didn't know when I met this man that became my mentor. His name was Sam Robbins. And I didn't know I was actually speaking to a puritanical genius. I mean, not the IQ baloney, because I don't believe in IQ. Right? Like I say, all these educated idiots that don't know how to implement or execute anything. They just know the book knowledge, right? And he was just the opposite. And to show you what an amazing man he really was, it's an extraordinary story. He grew up during the Depression. In the United States, there was this time period called the Great Depression. And he grew up during that time period, and he told me that they were so poor, basically, no money, that for some of the meals when he was a child, they had and ate cardboard.
You said
So
cardboard, right?
that's exactly what I said. And
Okay.
and so and he told me about this time period, this Great Depression, that where people had lost their fortunes and people were jumping off of the top of buildings and committing suicide, and standing in multi-mile long soup kitchens. And he told me about one day he went by, and he would pass by the store every day, just sort of walking by it. And there was just one man in there ever, and the store was filled with sewing machines. So he went in one day, just sort of talking, and he had this sort of flash in his mind. He thought, just for the heck of it, I'm going to talk with this guy. It turns out he was the owner. And my business mentor, Sam, said, I can see there's no one in here. He goes, yeah, no one's got money. He said, at least if we to buy a sewing machine, they don't have money to eat, let alone for sewing machines. And these things are just collecting dust right now. He said, I don't even have any employees. I can't afford any. It's me. I'm the only guy here as the owner. So my business mentor said to him, would you mind if I help you sell some of those sewing machines? And the guy said, yeah, no problem whatsoever. What do you have in mind? He said, well, what I propose is we let people buy them on payments, and we'll split the payments. He said, if they don't make the payments or they take off with the machine, out of the machine, so you'll never lose the machine. And he said, and we'll split the payments together. And the guy said, man, go for it. That's great, because right now they're just sitting here collecting dust. None of them are going anywhere, so something's better than nothing. So my business mentor then hand printed up some flyers and posted them all around for women to work from home. And he was inundated, which he couldn't even respond to everyone, because everyone needed money. And if everyone was hiring in any place, they wanted it, right? So he got all of this huge response. And what he did then is taught each one of these women how to have their own little sewing machine business in their home, if you will. He sold them the sewing machine on payments. He gave them the patterns. He gave them the materials. Then he also guaranteed he would buy the clothing from them that they made, so that they had virtually had a guaranteed income, which helped them pay for the sewing machines. Then the clothing, listen how amazing this is, then the clothing that he bought from them, he then sold to stores as high quality, handmade, deeply discounted clothing that the stores could then sell to customers who wanted to buy great quality of things but didn't have the money. So he solved all these problems. He solved the problem for the sewing machine owner place, solved the problem for the women, and formed this huge community, which is what really we're going to talk about today, is the Givers communities. He formed this huge community of women that were working from home, and solved the problem for them, solved the problem for the stores, and solved the problem for the customers. While people, now here's the part of all of it, while people, Michael, were jumping off of buildings, standing in multi-mile soup kitchen lines, in 1 year, he earned $1 million. Now, you have to be an extraordinary person to pull that one off. And he truly, truly was. And because, because of his diet and, the welfare time period, I guess you could say, in his life, he got an extreme case of diabetes, and as a result, it took his life much earlier than he should have. But when I was 19 years old, I asked him, I said, Sam, could you teach me everything, just all of it? I mean, he's a multimillionaire so many times over, and and he's so happy and just such an awesome person. And I was so blessed to even have him in his life, let alone my mentor. And I said, Sam, could you teach me everything? Don't hold back. I want to know all of it, everything. He said, okay, I will. But I want one thing from you. And I said, okay, what's that? He said, when the time is right, and you will know that time, he said, I want you to teach as many people as you can everything I've taught you. So, Michael, at the age of 19 years old, I made a vow. I made an oath to my business mentor that today is called Givers University. That's how it all came about. It was a result of an oath, and what I wanted to share with your listeners today was a little bit about the communities, and how communities, there's givers communities and takers communities, and what's the difference and how to build those.
Right. Okay. So that is an amazing story, and I know how, because for myself, I have a mentor who's actually flesh and blood that I can go talk to, and I also have a mentor that she has built her media community up ahead of me, so I know that it can be done, sort of thing. But the odds of me actually meeting that person are probably won't happen. But then again, it doesn't really matter because I can follow her story. So I understand the value of mentors and also the value of community, because our whole system is based on building a listening community that is going to build a greater community of to help humanity. So we're in alignment together on this. And that is still a stunning and amazing story of how he built a whole community within Chicago that probably lifted a bunch of people out of what would be a depressed mindset in the middle of the Great Depression. That's an amazing thing. So,
yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So, what are some of the wisdoms that you learned from this?
Well, first of all, I like to share with your listeners and sort of maybe invest some wise nuggets with them that were passed on to me, because I want to say, first of all, Michael, I didn't make up any of this stuff. Anything I'm about ready to say, it was all taught to me and taught to me by people a lot smarter than me. And I only had one superpower, only one. I had the ability to say, I don't know anything about that. Could you please teach me about that? I'd love to learn. That was it. Today where everyone's trying to be preeminent and, they all want to be the smartest people in the room and everything. My superpower was being just the opposite. I was the first one to say, I don't know about that. Could you teach me? And what happened is I was always learning from people that knew this stuff and were much smarter than me, and then learned how to apply it. And I was just discerning as to who I wanted to listen to. And today with communities, there's a lot of great communities. There's people who love dogs and they help dogs, and there's people that help children. And there's so many great organizations and doing so many great works. But what's interesting is that the word community, I've noticed in the last couple of years, has begun to take on an additional and different definition. And I can share with your listeners how easy that can actually happen. Years ago, if I said to someone the word DIET, which was diet, years ago, that meant I was going to a meeting to meet 2 or 3 people. When I went to meet them, I went to a diet. It was a meeting, right? And then years later, spelled the same way, if I received an allowance or a stipend on a regular basis, that was called a diet. I received a regular diet. The allowance was called a diet, right? Then as I was growing up as a child, the word diet meant eating habits. It was the way you ate. Now if you say diet, it means weight loss, right? Same word. All those times it's spelled the same way and it's the same word, but took on totally different meanings. And I submit to you the same thing is happening now as we're seeing it with the word community. There are many great communities, but also there's a good number of so-called communities, or as I call them, taker communities. So I share an example with your listeners and see if this rings true. Have you ever had an instance where you are cajoled, invited, come and join our community, a bunch of great people, we're all together. And then you get in and you say, okay, and you join the community, and within hours later, they're already trying to sell you a bunch of things, right? And then, I just unjoin. I say, you guys aren't a community. This is a customer list. Why don't you just call it what it is? Why are you doing the bait and switch on me, right? Don't call it a community because it's not a community. It's a prospect list. It's a customer list. And tell me that, and then I'll decide if I want to be a part of it. If you have good products, maybe I will. But don't do the bait and switch on me, to pull me in and then all of a sudden start hitting me. And we see more and more and more of this, I think, as time goes on. And it's not a good thing. And so I refer to these as taker communities because taker communities are formed with only one intention in mind, Michael. And that intention is to make money off of you. That's it. That's the purpose, right? They're designed, crafted, and put together with only one intention, and that's to make money of you, making money off you. Now, by extreme contrast, a couple of things that my mentor taught me was, number one, when I was in my late teens, he said, let me talk this thing called life and how it works. He said, picture in your mind a scale. And on the one side of the scale are all the things you're going to receive in your life, all the benefits you're going to get, all the things you're going to get in your whole lifetime. He said, on the other side of the scale are all the things you're going to give and contribute in your lifetime. He said, now, the scale is extraordinary because it always strives for balance. In fact, it will always be in balance, even if at a moment it seems out of balance. It will ultimately balance itself. It always does. He said, that's the giver's scale of life. He said, now, here's the way to make it work. He said, it's going to be hard in the beginning, what I'm about ready to say. And he said, it's a simple thing to say, but not necessarily easy. He said, forget about all the stuff you're going to receive. Forget about it. Forget about it totally. And he said, and make it your job to heave and do as much as you can, put as much on the giving side as you can, and make it your goal to try to get that scale out of balance, because it always strives for balance. He said, so if you focus all your attention on trying to get that scale out of balance, when it balances yourself, he said, you'll never have to worry about what's going to be on the other side. And I can share with you, Michael, those were very, very sage words. And what I'm about ready to say is not to be braggadocious, but to say it works. When I was 23, I was a millionaire. When I was 33 was the first year in my life, the first year, at 33 years old, was the first year I earned $1 million in 1 year in personal salary, not business money. Personal salary. After I paid taxes, I had $1 million left over. And I was 33 years old. Why? Because this stuff works. It wasn't me. He just taught me how to do it and how to think and how to make these things happen. So I share with your listeners, these are tried and true. This is not pie in the sky or anything else. These things really genuinely work. So, and then the next thing, which are the two most important parts I want to share with your listeners, was he came to me one day, and I shared with you his health was deteriorating because he had extreme diabetes and because of his eating habits and lack of nutrition, as a child. And one day he came to me, and I'm in my 30s now, and he says, we eat with each other. I said, what? I said, what do you mean? Because at that point, we actually were equal partners. We owned 50-50 of all the business interests together, right? I'd worked my way in. And he says, well, this is what I propose. We compete against each other, and here's the competition. We both compete to see who can make the other one more money in 1 year. And the loser has to buy the winner anything they want and anything they ask for. I said, I'm going to make sure I understand what you just said, because this is really something different. I've never heard anything like this before. All right, what you're saying, Sam, is as follows. That means we're going to compete, and that means that we're going to see who can make the other one more money than the other one. So if I make you more money than you make me, I win, you lose. That means I get to ask for anything I want, and you have to buy it for me? And he said, yeah. I said, so on the other side of the coin, that also means that if you win and I lose, you get to ask for anything you want, and I have to buy it for you. And he said, that's right. So I got to tell you, Mike, I took a big breath on that one. I said, well, this is going to be interesting. Okay. Well, I have to tell you, the first year, he beat me so bad it wasn't even funny. I mean, he just brutalized me. He made me so much money I wasn't even close. That year, Mike, I paid cash for him for a house in Florida. Now, I couldn't be upset about it. I couldn't be mad. He made me more money than I made him, and I had the money. So I couldn't get mad about it. Now, and I thought to myself, man, I got to get smart fast. This is going to be brutal if I don't figure out how to, I got to win here a little bit, right? And the next year I did win. And then he bought me an aircraft, and that's when I became a commercial pilot. The next year he bought me a limousine. And then the next year he bought me a second aircraft. And I can share with you. And then after that, we just started carrying forward. What do you buy? I don't know. Just carry it forward. And then it was only years later I realized the real genius of what he had done. Here's what he really did. He knew as time was going on, his health was deteriorating. We both knew it. And he knew that he wasn't going to be able to keep up with me in my 30s. And, his health is deteriorating at that point. So, so can you imagine? He knew up front that I would start winning, and he wanted me to because we were splitting everything 50-50, knowing he couldn't keep up. He didn't want my mind to get goofed up. because I would be putting in more effort than him and we were splitting. He wanted me to win. He wanted me to get that extra thing that he was again. So, Michael, what kind of person comes up with that? What kind of person crafts that in their mind, thinks of it all in advance, can play it forward in their head, foreseeing what will happen in a certain circumstance, and craft that whole thing? How extraordinary is that?
I've never heard of anything that extraordinary, and I followed some stories of some of our biggest billionaires, or should I say the ones that are famous, right?
All right.
But yeah, I've never heard anything quite exactly like that. So what do you call a person like that?
I mean, a blessing, man. I got to tell you, a real blessing. That and these were, and what he was doing, Michael, is he was teaching me things at the same time. Also, he was teaching me how to win at life. You know, how to do it the right way instead of the other way that people do. And so many people, they it looks like they win short term, but they really don't, and they never win long term. And it is also brings with it a lot of remorse and a lot of unhappiness and all these things that go on. And he didn't want me to experience that. So what I began to do then was sift through all of what he was sharing with me. Plus, I had a vow I needed to commit to, right? So what we've begun to do, Michael, is teach people how to form their own communities, just like he did with that group of women, and just like he taught me over the years of what to do. So we have at Givers University, we teach people at no cost how to build their own Givers communities around them. And not broad, innocuous swaths of information, but the genuine granular approach. This is what this is step one. Here's step two, here's step three. You're probably familiar with, I'm sure your listeners are, there's a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Excellent book. And Napoleon Hill talks about the mastermind, which is great. He does a masterful job explaining it. But he doesn't really explain how to build it. He just talks about it, and in his era, that was enough for people. That was enough for them to grasp what a mastermind was, let alone anything else. Now it's, everyone knows, you say the term and everyone knows what it is, right? But at that time it was a little bit different. So we began to then think, okay, well, how do you do it? I personally, maybe you do too, know of a few people that got together and wanted to form a mastermind, and 2 or 3 months later it dissipates. It just sort of falls apart and goes by the wayside, and they just sort of go their separate ways, right? And it sort of bothered me because I thought, man, it's such an powerful thing, whenever two minds get together in a spirit of harmony, a third mind is formed, and so much power comes out of that. I've witnessed it in my life with myself and my business mentor. I said, man, if we're going to teach people the parts that are falling apart and help them. So we decided to do that. So we have what we call a Givers Junto. And a Junto, by definition, is like a community. A junto is a group of people that get together on a regular basis for a common purpose. That's a junto. A group of people get together on a regular basis for a common purpose. Now, the word itself actually is sort of interesting. It's actually a word from the 1600s, wasn't used much. And in the 1700s, a man by the name of Benjamin Franklin picked it up. And in 1727, Benjamin Franklin formed a group of 12 friends called the Mutual Improvement Club. And then from that, he later on called it the Junto, and later on he called it the Leather Apron Club. They met every Friday. They met every Friday for a couple of hours. They talked about politics and ethics and morals and helped each other in business. And what's interesting is that in the United States, we have a thing called the Declaration of Independence. Our Declaration of Independence could actually arguably be traced back to the original conversations Ben Franklin had at his junto. So you can't tell me a junto can't be powerful. So there's 3 kinds of juntos that we teach people and help them build. They can form their own. We teach them how to do that. They can become a part of another one. We can connect them to do that too. We do all this for free because our job, Michael, is to do what my mentor taught me. Get that scale out of balance. Heave so much on the other side of helping so many people do something they never could have done, and the results from that. So let me just touch on, sort of in the interest of time, a little bit quicker, if you will, the 3 different kinds of juntos, and I'll just sort of hit the 7 steps of how they form them, and then I'll share people, where they can get more info.
Okay.
because I really want to just create a lot of value for your listeners so they go, wow, this is great stuff. I got to check this out because I want one of these, because it'll impact their life. So the first Junto, there's three kinds. First, we call it the greater Junto. The greater Junto size, worldwide usually, could be worldwide, could be 2,500, few thousand, thousands of members. I could use as an example maybe the Salvation Army, maybe the Lions Club. Those would be example of, greater Juntos, if you will. The next is what's called a Givers Insider Junto. This is a Junto of 2 to 12 people, more close-knit, a little more intimate group. Good example, Benjamin Franklin's Leather Apron Club. That would be a good example of an insider Junto. Then we have the Givers Millionaire Junto, which is actually a Junto of 2 to 12 vetted millionaires who are all meeting together at a regular basis for a common purpose. Now, a good example of that, first of all, my business mentor and myself, we were Millionaire Junto members, just the two of us, right? Because it's 2 to 12 members. Another good example of that was actually there was a man by the name of Henry Ford who formed his own Junto. In 1915, Henry Ford formed a Junto that consisted of him, Thomas Edison, the inventor, Harvey Firestone from Firestone Tires, and John Burroughs, who was actually a writer and a poet, and sort of an interesting, his real job in real life on an ongoing basis was a federal bank examiner. So he must have been the money man. I don't know. It's just, federal bank examiner. He must have, don't do that, right? But so, and Henry Ford gave it a name. They called themselves the Four Vagabonds. And they used to travel together, and it became quite known as a matter of fact. And this was Henry Ford's Junto. They all, and here's what's so critical about these three kinds of Juntos, or any Junto, for it to work. The first thing is you have to have expectational agreements up front of what's expected of everyone. See, a lot of times they say, well, let's just sort of get together. Well, and because there's no specifics, if you will, that everyone will be, that need to agree to up front and that they're going to be accountable for long term, there's no glue and it starts to dissipate, right? So I want to touch on with your listeners, if I can, the 7 steps of forming a Junto.
Yes, please. The 7 steps, right?
7 steps. It actually spells out a word. It's an acronym.
Okay.
And the word is discern. DISCERN. Discern, right? And each one of those letters represents a step. So the first one, the first step, D, is to decide who you want to have in your Junto. This is a biggie because, I get asked, I say, well, I really want to do this, but, how do I even decide? It's like, this interview I did, going back a few months. I saw this one guy in an interview, and he said, man, this is really great stuff. And I read a book that says I have to have 5 really good people around me. And I said, you're right, but let me ask you a question. Which 5? And all of a sudden he stared back at me because he realized he didn't know. And I said, do you see my point? No one's teaching how to discern, which is one of the skills we teach specifically at Givers University. How do you discern in your relationships? We teach, simply put. First of all, I say to your listeners, we love everybody. I say it emphatically. We love everybody. But what we teach people how to do is how to separate the person who we love from their deeds, which we may not love, and from observing their deeds. So when we say giver, Michael, we're not labeling a person as a giver. We're labeling giver deeds. When we say taker, we're not labeling a person. We don't label people. Right? We're labeling their deeds or taker deeds. So what we teach is a skill to observe the deeds of what the person is doing, even by virtue of checklists we provide. Watch them doing these things. And when you see them doing these things, you can, that I pull closer into my life. Or should I begin respectfully distancing myself? Respectfully, not rude or nasty. Respectfully distance myself, because if I bring that person in closer, they're going to make me collateral damage, and I'm going to be stomping out fires not of my making. And I don't have time for that. I want my productivity to count every day. So I ask your listeners, think about all the times you stomp out fires, and think about the times when your stress levels go up. In common, there's a name attached to them. So we teach people the skill of how to discern in advance. What should you be watching? What should you be looking for? What should you be observing and aware of? Don't listen to what they're saying. Don't buy into that. because I've met many people who are very sincere, but they were sincerely wrong. So sometimes sincerity can throw us off the mark because we don't realize they're being very sincere. They're just wrong. They're sincerely wrong, right? Sincerity should be always weighed on sincerity scales and truth on truth scales. Don't put them on the same scale. So what we actually give them, Michael, and we give as a free download, what we call the 25 do's. These are the 25 deeds, actual deeds to watch for that will help you and help everyone. It's absolutely free. We want to give it. We want them to download it, print it off, put it in your pocket. And with all your relationships, business, social, financial, whatever, family, begin to discern in your relationships because no one's teaching us how to discern. Everyone says, we need to be on self-improvement. I'm for that. I'm a self-improvement geek. I'm sure you are. Yeah. But no one else is teaching, what about the other guy, Michael? What if he's not doing it right? What should I do about that? Right? And there's a lot of people not doing it right. Right? So from a direct result, we give people these 25 do's. So the D and discern, decide who decide who are going to be your 2 to 12, whatever. And we give them a checklist that they can work from, the things they should be observing that will help them make the right decision. If you got a person that's doing all 25 of those, they're already where you need them. There's no further explanation needed. Bring them in and invite them. They're there already. They couldn't be doing those 25 and not be there, right? Now, by contrast, if they're only doing like 10 or 12 and the rest they're not doing, well, they might be being a little takerish. And now you may want to consider, I don't know if I should bring them in because they're not going to be where they need to be to make that whole thing work. So the I stands for invite. Got to invite them. You invite all 12 of them. Or how many? The S is for seed. This is where you explain the expectational agreement. This is critical. You do it up front before they're agreed to be allowed a part of the group. This is so critical. All right. So they have to agree to. Now with the Givers Junto, we have what we call the 3 pillars and the 1 intention. With the Givers Junto, they have to agree to those up front. Otherwise, we just say we love you, God bless you. It's just not a good fit for you. That's just that simple, right? So we have the 3 pillars and the 1 intention that we have. Just to say it for your listeners, so they get a feel for that. First, they have to commit to what we call the Giver's Credo. Our credo is give to be great. You can be great by giving. You don't have to be a taker to be great. Second is our pledge. The Giver's Pledge is to help every Givers Junto member lead a life of predictive, massive, and exceptional happiness, freedom, and greatness. They all have to agree to that up front. Third, our labor of love. Our labor of love we're launching actually this coming fall, the fall of 2022. It's extraordinary. It will be genuinely planet changing. And for those that want to be a part of something much bigger than themselves, this is the baby. We are actually launching next year, which the Givers Junto Labor of Love, ending hunger 1 zip code at a time. We know how to do it. And we are going to be having that and launching it through our Givers Juntos as the big labor of love, if you will, because every Junto needs to have a labor of love. Now, our 1 intention, remember I said there's 3 pillars and 1 intention. The 1 intention is each member must commit up front to the Giver's Contest intention. The Giver's Contest intention. The contest is the contest I referred to that my business mentor came to me with. That every member must agree up front that they have a fiduciary responsibility. Let's assume, Michael, there's 12 in the group. That each member has a group to help the others, the other 11, to a greater extent than what they're getting. And when you have a group of 12 people who every one of them is doing it and giving back 11 people to that one, the power becomes extraordinary. But it has to be established properly, committed to, and that we expect this up front. If you can't agree with it, fine, no problem. It's just not a good fit for you, right? But if it is a good fit, we all commit to this. We all have committed to it, and long term, we're going to stick to it. So if someone falls off the rails, we're going to talk to it, and then if they stay off the rails, then we need to find someone else. It's just that simple, right? So the C in discern stands for convene. They need to convene on a regular basis. Like Ben Franklin's Junto, is every Friday. It could be weekly, it could be bi-weekly, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly. but they need to convene. That's what the C in discern is for. They need to convene on a regular basis, right? The E is to establish a name. Give your junto an identity. The Four Vagabonds with Henry Ford. The Leather Apron Club with Ben Franklin, right? Give it an identity because that helps with the glue and camaraderie of the group. We're all a part of this. This is a part of our group, right? And those are critical aspects. The R is for rotate. We are going to give them, if it's a giver's junto, an agenda, so that on an ongoing basis to provide structure, which is a critical part to that long-term glue of holding the group together, is structure. We're going to provide them with an agenda of questions they can ask at their next meeting and their next meeting and next meeting that all participate. And the R for rotate in discern, the R, letter R, means a different person will sort of be the chair for each meeting, because we're going to give them the agenda to cover. There's not one person better than the other. The whole group is there to do one thing. Have a fiduciary responsibility to give more to the other 11, assuming there's 12, than they're getting. And the N, to finish it, stands for numbers. To seed other juntos. Not only their own, they can be a part of a millionaire junto if they're a millionaire. They can be a part of an insider junto as well. And to seed other ones because of the great work that goes with it. So those are the definition, if you will, of the difference between a taker's junto, a taker's community, I should say, that has been formed to earn money off of you, versus the giver's junto, which is established specifically with each member having a fiduciary responsibility to help each member greater than themselves. So that's that I think that is really different and unique information, and also from the feedback I've gotten, these are things people want to hear. They want, well, how do I do that? I hear about that. I read Think and Grow Rich. But how do I go about? We walk them through every step of the way.
All right. So, you know what? That was a great explanation. Unfortunately, that thing that we call a clock is ticking down on us now.
Yeah, and I'm just about done, so we're good.
Okay, good.
I'm good. Perfect timing.
With all that, what's the best way to get a hold of you to learn these things? Because it's something that we all need to learn and put into our lives, not just our businesses, but to put it into our lives, right?
Right. Well, they have three options. One, they can go to our YouTube channel. It's Givers. All they do is just put it in one word, University on YouTube. And it'll pull it up and go onto the playlist. There's a couple of playlists. The one on top says how to build your own Givers Junto. They will see a series of 2-minute clips that starts with what is a Givers community, all the way through step by step. And every week we add another 2-minute clip to that so that people can go through absolutely free on YouTube and just watch step by step. The other way is they can go to our website. It's plural, giversuniversity.com, giversuniversity.com. Sign up for our newsletter. They're going to get an email right away that says, do you want to talk with these people? Because we don't spam. So they have to respond to that. And minutes later, they're going to get their first download that's free. That's called the 6 arrows that takers shoot at givers. 2 days later, Michael, they're going to get that 25 do's checklist I mentioned. That's so critical in deciding who they're going to have in their junto. And for relationships, it's a free download. We want to have it. Then once a week, because we don't spam people. Yeah, I hate that. You sign up for something, and next thing you know, you get 10 emails a day from them, and I just go, unsubscribe, right? So once a week, every Thursday, very short and sweet. We call it the Givers Toolbox. Every week we give them a new relationship tool that they can add in their Givers Relationship Toolbox. And it's a short little newsletter, an easy read, and the 2-minute clip for that week on the juntos is also in there as well. So, and then the other way is they can go to our website and go to the hamburger in the upper right, click on that, and look for the tab that says Givers Junto. If they want to form a chapter of any of those 3 different kinds of juntos, or they want to be a member of any of those 3 kinds of juntos, they can do it right there. Fill in, please contact me regarding this information, and we'll be back in touch with them and help them do it. So we're doing all of it. It's absolutely free. Every bit of what I said is absolutely free. They'll learn more about it, what we're doing. But we know that there's a huge value and a huge hole of people who really want to be a part of something great. And if they don't, they want to form one and know they can. They just don't know how to do it. And that's what we're teaching.
Wow. All right. So I'm going to advise everybody listening that you want to be part of this, and we
Thank
all
you.
can do something great. So I want to thank you, EA, for joining us today, and
Thank you.
everybody listening, go check out especially the YouTube channel. It's probably going to be the easiest way, and join in with EA Csolkovits and form your own Junto, or join into a Junto, and just let's make our world a great place.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on your great show, and I pray that we shared some great value for your listeners today. Thank you.
All right.
That shooting star, and then I wondered where you are. Is it destiny, or is it meant to be?
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.